All right, it's time to talk with our featured guests, Vitaliya and Eddie. How y'all doing today?
Doing great, thank you.
Doing great.
How are you?
Thanks for having us.
No, thank you for coming along. I super appreciate it. If you don't mind me asking, tell us a little bit about your past, your present. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, it's a big question. So I'm originally from Ukraine, and I know Ukraine is pretty famous now for wrong reasons. I moved here in my 20s. By that time, I did finish dental school in Ukraine. I started pretty early. And then when I came to America, I landed in New York City, and I, at the moment, wasn't sure whether dentistry was something that I actually wanted to do, or maybe there were other things. I come from a third generation of dentists, so in one way, it was something that was expected from me. And I think I wasn't sure at this moment when I had all these options whether it was something that I wanted. So I think for a year I tried to try different, professions, which most of the time I wasn't hired because I had dental background and everybody was looking at me like I was crazy. So eventually I decided that dentistry probably was what I was going to pursue. And then I got a job as a dental assistant and started to figure out what to do. I started to get ready for boards because that was the path at the time. I know it may be different now, I'm not sure. So at the time you had to take board 1, board 2 sometimes, and then apply to dental school that had programs they were called advanced standing dental programs. And then you literally go back to like either year 2 of dental school, in some cases year 3, and then you do the whole program. And then at that point, I think you can just take the licensure. I don't know, because you already took boards. I don't know, it's kind of backwards. So I did that. I applied to a couple schools and I got in NYU. And then I studied 3 years there, and I did a 1-year general residency in Montefiore in Bronx. And then when you think you got it all finally figured out, you're going to conquer the world, except you realize nobody really wants to hire dentists out of dental school. And then, it was just kind of a little bit difficult trying to figure out what to do next, and having no connections and not knowing really anybody. It was a little bit difficult, and then you find one job and then you try to see, if this is your dream job, and most of the time it wasn't. And then, I traveled even to Philadelphia. I had a job there, and then I ended up in DC, and that's where I met my husband. And at the time I thought that it was just for 1 year, I will just, work here and go back to New York because I love New York so much and never imagined even living it. But then I guess I loved my husband more. So here we are. And then, a few years later, we decided that maybe it was time for me to start my own practice, because it wasn't the kind of practice that I wanted to be where I was. My husband, can tell you more, he was going to start his company, and the plan was that he was going to do it first, and then somehow things went different way.
Things changed.
And we both basically quit our jobs and started our companies and had a baby at the same time.
Wow.
So one advice is to not do this ever.
Don't ever do it. Okay, no, that's interesting. We'll get back to that in a little bit right now, but
right, basically how we got here.
Yeah. Okay. And so just so the viewers and the listeners know, Eddie, you're the husband, right?
I am the husband.
Yeah.
My dental journey basically, other than going to the dentist, it started when I met her, but, basically, I had some bad dental experiences in the past. And so, I was getting my graduate degree in Colorado, and I was teaching at the university, and I had a university sponsored dental insurance plan. I'd never had a cavity in my life, and I went to a dentist, and I had just enough cavities to take me to that annual max. Could you believe that? That's crazy, right? And really hadn't had many problems since then. So, my background is industrial psychology. It's people at work and, in and around organizations. And we basically, when she started talking about, starting a practice, I encouraged her. I think she's a great dentist because I've been to her, and, I have teeth and I know. And, I think we kind of made a nice match in sort of the backgrounds that we brought. So I'm not a dentist. I am only doing this for the past, 5 or 6 years, but it's been a learning process for me.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's interesting. So then both of you were going to start your business, or you decided to start, or is it running right now? Or, obviously
He has his own completely. Actually, he was not even here for the most part. He was doing it with this background. And now this year, he decided to join us more, but he can tell he has his own different consulting business.
Yeah, I have a consulting company, and we basically do everything from process mapping, complex processes, building selection systems. I built one for dental bar. We typically work with much larger organizations and startups and stuff like that. So, but it's basically management consulting. I worked at some of the big four consulting companies, all that. I've got about 20 years, 25 years of consulting experience prior to this. And we were going to start, she was going to start a business. I was going to start a business. I was going through sort of the promotion process at the company that I was working for. And she just couldn't find a location. And so, I finally got promoted and I was like, now is the time. If you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And she just couldn't find a spot where she wanted to put her practice. So I jumped out and started. And like maybe weeks later, our realtor contacted us, was like, I got a couple of new places for you to take a look at. And she fell in love with one of them. And so we ended up both basically, doing it at the same time.
Interesting. Okay. At that time, were either Vitallya or Eddie, like, were any of you guys like, hey, don't quit. I want to do my thing. Or were you just, hey, both of us, let's quit and jump into it?
No, we're very supportive. I mean, honestly, I think we just, I don't know, it's adrenaline or something. I don't know why entrepreneurs do this. I have no idea. Like, that's a different question. But I think he was pretty much a partner at Deloitte at the time. And he quit that.
No, I was not a partner.
We almost. I mean, I'm just saying, you were like, that's what's the next move. And then he's like, what should I do? We basically have paths that it's like everything is great and guaranteed, or completely, we have no idea what the hell is going to happen. And like, yeah, of course it's that. It's like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I don't do this. If you
do not do this.
I mean, this is not, if you're thinking about starting a practice because you love the idea of selecting your own equipment and, treatment planning the way you want a treatment plan. And, if those are things that are driving you, that's a great start. But if you also want, someone to routinely kick you in the stomach over and over again and feel like you can get back up and keep going forward, it's not easy in any way, shape, or form. And, if you want to do it right, you have to be engaged in the business. And, so if you're wondering about if you're already in it, you already know, right? You already know where we are. But if you're thinking about it, be very serious, be very mindful about what you think you're capable of and whether or not you really have that entrepreneurial mindset to go out and learn a bunch of new stuff that you were never, ever taught in dental school.
And have somebody like a husband or a wife who is in a stable position.
That's helpful too.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So can I ask, I mean, especially both of you, I know for you, Vitallya, you said it wasn't your dream job. And so you were looking for something different. And Eddie, you were being promoted. So, I mean, it could have been like, well, this is nice, right? Kind of thing. What made both of you decide, even like it was, I mean, the promotion, that's like a good pinnacle, right? It's like, hey, this is happening. What made you guys decide, forget that, let's do our own thing and go into the unknown?
For me, it was easier. I knew it wasn't the place where I wanted to be.
So for me, I mean, I had just been promoted to basically the step below partner. And I've always wanted to be my own boss, to have the freedom that comes with, right, the responsibility as well. And partnership at one of these firms is a really great opportunity, but you are not the owner. You're the owner with 10,000 or 20,000 other owners, right? And so, you make decisions as a group and, that's really great for some people, but I wanted this will rise or fall with me. And so, sort of that ability to, it was much more than the financial rewards. It was more the, can I do this? Can I build this on my own? So. Gotcha.
Yeah, you're right. There's something in an entrepreneur that's just like, you're like,
you're messed
we'll
up
do
in
it.
the head.
We're messed up in the head. No, it's interesting. It's interesting. So now if we can kind of dive into a little bit of the practice right now. Currently, I know you talked about you were with a realtor and then they just said, hey, we got some places for you. How did you find your location? What realtor did you go with?
We had to do it twice, right? So when we originally selected the first location, and we were smart about it, we had vendors that helped us, and an attorney that helped us negotiate the right lease, and did a lot of research on our own. I think there were a variety of factors that we were looking at. We were looking at parking, we were looking at accessibility. We knew what we were looking for in terms of the practice that we wanted to build, so it had to have a.
I mean, the area is very saturated already, so it wasn't that many.
Yeah, there's about,
options?
if you look at the analytics at the time we were doing it, it was about 1,600 patients per dental license in the area. So, pretty saturated in terms of that. And, I think we had a great location. It wasn't the most accessible, but more different dental experience, and people talk and, they share that. And so people will come find you if you're offering something that they're interested in. And so, we sort of knew the parameters, things to look for, things not to, and then sort of decided based upon sort of the vision that we had, where can we sort of break those rules a little bit based upon what what we're trying to accomplish.
Eddie is always laughing at me because I would come in there to check and I have no idea what I'm looking at. Like, I'm not even looking at what normal people look at. I go to the window and I see if I see trees, and then do I like the trees?
Are the windows big enough?
Yeah, windows big enough, like enough. And then basically that's all I cared about. So he was like, wait,
I don't
how
know.
much it costs? What I don't know. I mean, I don't understand anything. Like trees, I like. That's like
I like the tree. Well, you know what?
This is something I'm gonna look at every day.
Trees popped up on our Google reviews more than once, right? So she also got read, right? So
yeah,
it's got to feel right for the place that you're trying to build, and it just fit in well with her vision. Unfortunately, the building was sold, and we had to relocate. We went through we had a non-termination, no relocation clauses in our contract, so it was a negotiation rather than hey, we're going to be moving you.
It's probably something we can talk more about because it affected a lot of things in our business.
And then it was a matter of we've got an established practice, we're relocating that practice, right? So
it makes things a bit easier.
It's going to be close. We looked at did some analysis of addresses and what would be close, and then also had to sort of fit what we were doing. And you build it once, you sort of know the mistakes you made after living in it for a little bit. And so we had this opportunity to kind of correct some of those mistakes. So those were really driving factors, I think. And
this time we have water view, amazing water view.
Yeah.
No trees, but
no trees, but
I see.
Nice. We have amazing. We still kept the same. Actually, I think it's much better. Gorgeous views. I'm very happy.
Yeah, no, you guys have you're at a wonderful location. Now, if we could rewind back a little bit and go to that part. So you already had a practice. Were you practicing in it and then you had to relocate, or
No, so the first startup, it's the same practice, but we basically had to shut down for 6 months.
We shut down for 4 months.
And do it again.
And rebuild, and then, take all of our equipment with us. We had to, have all that communication with our patients, that whole process of not just the second build, but how do you actually move a giant x-ray machine without it breaking, and all of that.
But it also was linked to, and again, we'll probably go over this. We didn't know when it was going to happen. We probably, in about a year or so, they gave us a notice or we realized that something was going on, but they wouldn't tell us when or if for sure was going to happen. So then it was dragging, and we couldn't make some decisions to grow our practice because we knew we would probably have to vacate, but we didn't know when. So decisions like, do we add an extra room? Do we equip it? Do we, negotiate our insurance? Like all of this was basically put on hold for like 2 years. I don't know, 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, they came to us the January right before COVID was really getting very bad. I memean, if we had heard about it at that point, but it wasn't a thing. And, within a month, the world would change. And that was a whole nother thing. Or is this, because it was a sale of a commercial building to be renovated as a residential building. And so, would that happen? What were they going to do? COVID throws a big wrench in the system. And so we were sort of, we did not know. And it was, because they couldn't just terminate us, it was a negotiation. How are you going to incentivize us to pick up and move and assume this headache? And so it took about 18 months of discussions before we finally came to terms. And then it was a process of, hitting certain milestones. They had to get approval for their redesign before, this section of the contract kicked in, et cetera, et cetera. So it was, it was a process. And as Vitallya said, it really, it put a significant wrench in a lot of our growth plans because we were growing quickly. We were growing very quickly at the time. And, we just, had to figure out how much equipment do we need and when is this going to happen. And she talked about fees. We should talk about fees because fees are so important. And we needed to get out of the bad situation that we were in, but we were stuck to fees are tied to a location. And so it's just all of this stuff that you need to sort of plot out and plan for. And it all was a number of dominoes that they, when they first sat us down and said, hey, so we'd like to sell the building, it just, a lot of things had to take place.
Interesting. So then could this have been avoided somehow, or just,
I
it
mean,
just
you can own
happened?
the building yourself, right? I mean, you can own the building yourself, but if you're leasing from somebody, they have the right to sell it. But usually those, it could have been a much worse situation. If you had a bad attorney or a
Or
bad
you didn't have this in the
contract,
lease. Make sure you have this.
make sure you never sign any contract that allows your landlord to terminate your lease on their option, right? And they should also not be able to relocate you for any reason whatsoever. We've seen other people doing this research. We heard about a lot of people that don't have those clauses in their contracts. And as cities really work through this housing shortage, and a lot of these commercial buildings, which we all know where sort of commercial real estate is this year, as those buildings start going through renovations, just make sure your leases protect you.
The funny thing is, we almost faced the other location. So we debated between two. One is right on the King Street. We moved. What do you think happened with the second one? Right, same thing. It's been sold. We almost went there. I'm like, I wouldn't survive the second time. Literally, I'm like, this will be it. I'm just like done. I can't believe it. Like seriously.
So it does happen. It's unless you own the building, you don't really have a say in the matter. But if you have those protections in your lease, then you kind of hold all the cards when it comes to, because the current owner wants to sell it, the new owner wants to buy it, and the bank would be happy to finance that deal as well. So
they want you out really bad.
Yeah, they really want you out. So
kind of cards are in
make
your
sure
hands.
you protect yourself.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so that took 18 months. You guys eventually did everything. They relocated you here, or you guys figured this place out?
We took care of everything. We said, we'll take care of it. Thank you very much. We'll just take a check and then we'll go from there.
They had a building.
They wanted us to move into their stuff.
But it was not making sense.
Gotcha. Okay. And then go back to where you said you grew really fast. How? What were you doing? What mistakes did you realize back then? You're like, oh, we could have grown faster, or maybe we did too fast, or...
A variety of them. I mean, I think the first thing is, dental bar is a different dental experience, right? It's hard to sell a root canal. It's much easier to sell a dental experience, right? And if you have something, combined with a great dentist, I'm biased, but a great dentist, and a great team, right? Word travels fast, right? So we have done everything from print advertising, pay-per-click advertising, we've done social media advertising, we've done postcards, we've tried it, right? Google ads, pay-per-click. So we've used a variety of those things, but we found sort of the weirdest sources of new patients have been things like a random post in a Facebook.
Yeah, like I literally posted one post very open in some Russian-speaking group, mom's group. I'm not even a member of it anymore. Like to this day, I don't know how many patients I get from there. Somebody just came from this post again, and how do you even find this? I'm not even there anymore. That I think brought the most patients. I remember the first day I got like 500 responses when I posted.
We went to health
random. But in the end,
we went to buildings around us trying to.
People were kicking me out. It was embarrassing. I mean, literally, like things you do in the beginning. And I remember I even like use your approaches and things like you suggest. I mean, it's really hard to do. Like go to like Starbucks and whatever you suggested to do, because I was part of the startup, Facebook group. So I think word of mouth
ended up being the biggest. That and social media, Instagram worked well. But when you offer your patients amenities, right? Everybody has an answer to, do you know a good dentist, right? Sometimes it's yes, I know a great one. Sometimes it's don't go to mine. But what we were looking for is an experience that made people 3 cuticles down hear that and come running over and say, no, you have to go to my dentist.
Yeah,
that has been sort of the driving factor and really one of the key sort of sources of new patient growth for us has been word of mouth.
And the idea was to get as far from a typical dental experience as possible.
Right. So she took it from a clinical side, and I took it from I'm a psychologist, so from sort of the human experience side, and we broke down sort of everything about, you all are dentists, this, places that people don't want to go, it's pretty high up on that list, right? A funeral home is probably above that, people don't want to be at a dentist for, any length of time. And so anything you can do to make it a pleasant, pleasing experience. So we thought about, what are they going to see when they walk in the door? What are the smells going to be like? What are they going to hear? What kind of materials are they going to touch and feel? And, all of these sort of things that go into sort of that experience. And when you take that sort of time to curate that experience along with a great clinical, high tech, experience, people talk about it.
Interesting. Okay. We'll dive back into that in a little bit. But right now, currently, your team, how many employees do you have?
It varied.
Yeah, right now we have 11.
Okay,
We've
11.
We had more at some point.
Yeah, it's always in
Varied,
flux,
yeah.
right? People leave for medical reasons,
Mostly
for other
what we're doing,
reasons, so.
Okay. So a new segment in our interviews is we're sprinkling in 3 questions or scenarios throughout the interview so our audience can get to know you better. And the first scenario is, if you went undercover in your own company for a week, what do you think you discover that would shock you the most?
Probably, I think the amount of money that walks out the door, right? I mean, we stand behind what our team says. So we, end up writing things off if our team quotes the wrong prices. We certainly see more than it's changed, but we see more than a few people that walk out of here with balances. We've got somebody who came for some sort of treatment, but they're also due for recare and we don't get them on schedule, right? So, just from that sort of perspective, I think if I were to look under the hood a little bit, I think I'd probably be surprised by that because I already am aware of sort of opportunities lost, let's call them. But, I think there's probably a lot more of them.
Okay. So
I don't know. I think I'm more positively. I think I would be surprised that things actually pretty good and people, really care and really want to do better and take care of our patients. I don't know. I'm maybe just not aware of reality, but I think we have a pretty good team.
Yeah, we have a great team.
Yeah.
I don't mean to disparage them at all. They're fantastic. So they also appear more than once or twice on our Google reviews and whatnot. So they're great. We have a great team. We've spent a lot of time. We've invested in sort of hiring the right people and making sure they're well taken care of because we believe that if we take care of them, they're going to take care of our patients. And if they do that, we'll be taken care of.
Yeah, I actually created a whole selection process. It was a very thorough kind of interviewing to hire people, which I think now becomes, if anybody walks in the door at this point after COVID, I think you're hired. But before, actually, we tried to choose and pick. So that works well.
We still use it. We have a structured interview and a personality assessment that my company built. So, and then we have a set of specific questions that we ask for different, depending on the job you're interviewing for, and then sort of recommended responses so that anybody can run this structured interview. People will get the same sort of scenario-based questions. Tell me about a time when you had conflict with your, colleague at work and, I really got up in their face and gave them a piece of my mind. Where does that answer fit in terms of right or wrong? And so, that was all built and it works. It's just, it is a long drawn out process. So.
Normally, typically, let's just say I'm going in for an interview. How does that look right now?
Yeah, so you do an initial screening interview where we take care of some questions about, trying to find out what your salary requirements are. Do you have, the right required capabilities, all of that. We're assessing in ways that we would otherwise maybe not tell the candidate. For example, do they follow instructions for setting up the interviews? Are they there on time? Those things are noted. And because past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. And if you're late for an interview, you are going to be late for work because you're trying to be on your best behavior, right? So, we do all of that. If it works, then they come in for a longer set of interviews where they'll take the personality assessment. They'll meet with our team who will administer the scenario-based structured interview. And then depending on the position, if we really like the person, hygienist or something like that, we'll ask for a work sample, work interview. So paid, but we do that.
Okay, interesting. That's really like tedious then, huh? Like you're diving.
It is a long process and we have lost candidates because of it. But I think what we find is that when we stray from it, we're oftentimes making decisions based upon the wrong things. And this way we get a real good sense of the person and whether they're going to be a long-term fit for us.
What would the wrong things be? Like if you're, I like them because of this, and you're looking at it and you're like, that's not a good reason to hire them.
I get to really attach to people, right? So that actually, something that we're dealing with all the time because we have had team members that are constantly late or so that it affects everybody's, work. But I like them personally, right? Like she's a good assistant, she's this. but she has an attitude problem and she's late and that and then. So like, all these things can be, there are different variations of that, but eventually, well, this one is a drama creator, eventually affects everybody. Right. So no matter how much I like you for whatever reason, and most of the time I get attached to people, as I said, like I will not want to part with you easily once you work here. But then sometimes you have to, because eventually you realize this is best for the company and for everybody around you. And those are really hard decisions. It's best not to hire people to begin with like this,
Right.
And those red flags usually there to begin with.
We've made every, if there's a mistake you can make in starting a dental practice, we have made it, right?
We got it covered.
we're you want to know what not to do. We're the ones to ask. But I mean, we learn from our mistakes, right? I said earlier, if you are late for an interview, you don't have a shot. I'm sorry. There's no way. Because if you can't be here on time for an interview where you're trying to impress us and show us there's no way you're going to be here on time when you need to be here, right? We also look for personality. You have to be the right fit to work here, and not just bubbly and pleasant and all of that, but you just have to be sharp. You have to be willing to.
We also have very funny kind of ad when we post something, so I think it attracts certain kind of people.
I mean, everything we do, our brand is infused into everything that we do, including our job ads, and so we definitely do attract a certain character, a personality, right? But if I'm going to put you in front of, if you're a dental assistant, you're going to spend almost as much time with a patient, certainly more than the doctor, right? You're going to spend a lot of time with that patient. You are the face of this organization. Then you have to have the right personality, the right sit. We're all about sort of patient first, make them feel comfortable, make them feel like this is anything but a dental practice, and make them feel welcome. And so, if you don't have the right temperament and that kind of thing, it's very easy to see in an interview.
Gotcha. The job ad, it's humorous, you said. What does that look like?
I mean, it just starts out with, hey, we're looking for all this stuff, and
like a typical
good team player, and somebody who communicates well, and whatever. It's all these job ads sound the same, and Dental Bar is a different place, and we're looking for different people. And so, if you've been told that you should ever be a sculptor or a painter or a musician or a comedian then this might be a job for you. And if you are a good team player, then it definitely might be your job. And so we're really kind of trying to infuse, even our brochure for our membership plan is somewhat humorous and is infused with sort of, no, this is not dental insurance, and but saying that in a way that is aligned with our brand. It's embedded in our culture, it's embedded in our climate. Those two are slightly different things. It's just part of what we do, because if we were trying to be every other dental practice, we do it like everybody else.
Gotcha.
So we're trying to be specifically something different. And so you have to really live by that culture of what you're trying to create and make sure it permeates everything.
Gotcha. Okay. You mentioned something so different. I've never heard of that. I hear everybody talk about team culture. The climate? What is that?
So culture is like the what of your organization, right? It's the stuff. You've got policies, you've got technology, it's what is sort of manifestations of the vision and the mission of the founders. And that's what that is. But we all know that, there is reality, and then there is human perception of reality. And so organizational climate is actually sort of a shared perception of employees about what the culture is. So, or what the organization is. So if your culture is what it is, your climate is what your employees perceive it to be. And those two things are not the same. One is impacted by the other and vice versa. People behave based upon the climate, what they perceive the organization to be. If we say that we're a patient-first organization, but then we make a mistake and we're like, well, whatever, too bad for the patient, we're not gonna, then employees know that what they say and what they do, there's, a disconnect there. And so their perception of the organization, the climate, is going to be very different. And so climate tends to emerge from various mechanisms, but it's basically employee perception of what the organization is. And so we worked very hard to make sure that both the climate and the culture reflect sort of what we're trying to accomplish.
So interesting, because in practices I worked with, it's true. They're like, we're the practice that cares the most. And then I remember during like lunchtime or something, like, let the phone ring. We're taking lunch, right? Kind of thing. And then it just, you as an employee are like, oh, it's okay. We gotta, you know what I mean? Like the
I
climate.
see. There's what we say, and then there's what we do. And, and people they don't behave based upon what you say the organization is. They behave based upon what they perceive the organization to be. So if you're trying to drive organizational outcomes of interest, better performance, whatever, you need to make sure your culture is in line, but you need to make sure your climate is in line as well.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. So then let's talk about fees. I know you said we should kind of jump back into this, discuss it. What advice do you have for us on fees?
Check what your fees are before you open your practice.
Or be very, very
during, I don't know.
You're making a real significant decision when you decide to accept the various fee schedules. There are companies that are out there that will help you. And we were not served well by our first consultant. The state of consultants in the dental industry is, I hate to say it, but we haven't dealt with everyone, but it's not been what you would expect of a company like I've worked for in the past. And, and I think that, your fees are critical to everything that you do. I started our business and I had a budget, a massive Excel spreadsheet. I had sort of a revenue, scenario planning estimate tool and a budgeting tool that worked together to find out whether we were going to make money or lose money and how quickly it was going to be. And, fees are they're central to that half of the equation. And if you don't know and you accept fees that are terrible, our fees were terrible the first.
Now, a reason I also didn't know, because I was working before in New York and I was working in DC, and both were mostly Medicaid practices. So I didn't even have, and now I open practice in Virginia. It's a completely different practice where I have no idea in my life. I've never worked in I basically had no idea what I would compare with. So I was clueless. And we were told, you were getting like this really good fees. We negotiated for you.
75th percentile.
Or 80%.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
And then and then in reviews, like in our Google reviews, people were like, yeah, and it's super cheap too. And I'm like, wait, what? That's not what we wanted.
Yeah.
What the plan was. So, you really have to be very, very careful. We also, there's this question of should we be fee for service or should we, accept PPO or some other insurance? Be very, very selective, because if you grow with the wrong patients, it's going to be a long-term drag on your practice.
That's how we know.
We've made that mistake. We started by accepting every insurance that would have us, and we were just so happy that somebody would have us. And and over time we started to say, wait a minute, I'm getting 40% of what I'm getting over here. And if you accept some of these insurances, I will not say any names, but you probably know what I'm talking about. No one else around you is trying to accept that insurance. So you're going to get a bunch of those people, right? They're going to come to your practice. Now you're flooded with really low fees, right? I know how much money we need to generate per day, per hour, and per chair in order to break even, right? And these companies are paying for recare, and we're losing money every hour, and that's just unacceptable. So you do it for patient growth, but you don't understand the opportunity cost once you grow to a certain size of having these patients that are, these insurance companies, they're not paying fair fees for patient services.
Okay.
Now, it's good if you realize it quickly enough. It didn't happen in my case. Eddie was having his own thing. I had a baby, clueless about business in general, had no idea about this, didn't sleep. Still didn't sleep for like 5 years. So, I had no idea. I'm like, I know something is not working. What the hell is not working? I work like crazy. I had no idea. There are other things that went wrong, but basically it took a long time to understand what was going on. By that time, first of all, you already lost a lot of time and money, but then also this whole move thing came up, and we knew it was wrong, but we couldn't fix anything because we were told you have to be in a new location to start this whole process.
Your fees are tied to a location. So if you want to acquire another practice, right, and they have separate fees, you can actually operate with two separate fees, or pick and choose the fee schedules that work the best for you. And you can have somebody, a licensed dentist, working in both places, billing at different fees just based upon the location that they're in, right? And so now we're in this process of we're about to relocate, and we don't know how long it's going to be, and getting new fees, negotiating this process takes months, and then you have to notify people, and then it's you got to wait 3 months, and then they'll let you know when they're going to let you out of their contract, and all these other hoops that they make you jump through. So we were sort of frozen, and we weren't able to make that change. Now over the past couple of years, we've made significant steps to to sort of alleviate that problem, and we've seen the benefit, because not only are you getting better fees per patient, but even if you do lose some of your lower fee patients, you're able to spend more time talking to those patients and treatment planning for those patients that have the better insurance, right? And so you can have better discussions with them because there's not the crazy flow of traffic, because she was seeing 15 patients a day or more.
Plus, I had to go, like, we had 3 hygienists. We had, it was like a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
But if you think low fees are bad, no way, there is more. Because we had a great office manager who I trusted that she knows. And it turned out that we kind of forgot to file claims to insurances, or if we happened to file them and they were rejected, nobody ever checked. So on top of having low fees, we're just never paid for like months and months and months and months.
Yeah, so we didn't just have one baby in the last few years. We've had 3.
I had 3 kids back to back. So it's just that I
wow.
understand
Oh, wow.
the state of why.
Going on. And when we put somebody in a position, we had not always spent enough time tracking. And I do all our finances, all this other stuff. I just keep
But he
seeing
had his own business.
accounts
So
receivable
he's like, what's wrong with you? Like, I don't know. Leave me
and
alone.
increasing. And I'm like, this is either really good or we got a problem here. And after about a certain number of months, I started to dig into it. It took some digging because claims would get rejected because one number was off in the social security number and we never
Nobody knows
cleaned
about
it
it.
up
It's
and
just-
sent it back in, right? So you have to pay attention to every aspect of your business at all times.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember like this scene we came because we were paying our stuff during COVID, and I remember we came in and they kept filing all the checks. They were not depositing them. There was a big box, and whatever mail we were getting, they just put it there.
They're just sitting there.
Nobody even, whatever we could have gotten, nobody even deposited in the freaking bank.
Wow.
And I don't know this either. And then he's like, what is all of this? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I could shred it probably.
No.
I knew pretty quickly. The team that you have around you, it needs to be a great team. You need to take the time to select for the right personalities, but you also need to hold people accountable and pay attention. In the early days, there were, discussions about, I don't understand why it's taken so much of your time to run this business. And I'm trying to explain that, just running payroll takes a little bit of time.
Right, but I mean, I don't
Compliance
know.
and all of these other things. And when we said be willing to put in the time and effort, it is a lot of time and effort. And you can hire people to do things for you, but unless you're paying attention, you can't hold them accountable. You don't know what's going on. People will steal from you. People will, not perform on their jobs. There's any number of problems if you're not sort of watching them.
Interesting, man. You guys weren't getting paid. Now, something that helps us out quite a bit, especially listeners, is if you want to give specifics on names, like, hey, this consultant was the first one that we worked with. If you don't want to, you don't have to. You know what I mean?
No, we're gonna keep this. We're gonna say some good.
I'll tell you what, I won't say we had great help with PPO profits. They were great to sort of get us into the right fee schedules and things like that, and would certainly recommend them for getting set up with that.
Our name changed.
Yeah, we've been through a lot. I mean, but I do think that, certain things that you can watch out for are, first of all, always interview more than one vendor for a couple of reasons. First of all, they're going to be people you like, people you don't like. Second of all, prices are slightly different. Third of all, as a dentist, you generate a lot of revenue. You're going to generate a lot of revenue. Everybody that's circling around your practice knows that, right? So you want to be able to compare invoice to invoice and say, wait a minute, I don't understand. Why do you have this charge, but you don't have this charge? Oh, well, you don't really need it. You may need it in a year or, whatever, but, be an informed consumer of dental, vendors that are out there, and read your contracts, right? Because they're sneaking crazy things into the contracts these days. We refuse to sign them, but there are companies that have non-disparagement clauses in their contracts that says, I'm going to work for you. I'm going to do basically my work, how I want to do it. No NDA for me. I can do whatever I want with the information you're going to share with me, but you're going to have an NDA for you, and you can't say anything bad about me from now. And it would never cause anyone to not do business.
And you can bring the contract, but you still owe me for the whole year.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of crazy things that they'll put in there. If you see a non-disparagement clause in a contract, we signed one that had that in there just because we trusted the company and whatever, but think twice about that, because the real consulting firms in the world, they don't have those in their contracts because they know If I do a good job, you'll come back for more. If I do a bad job, you're going to let me go. And that's best for everybody.
And again, not like scare anybody, but for instance, we hired attorneys, right, who are dental specific, who are supposed, this is their job, they read those contracts every day, like real estate, right? I mean, when I tried to read, real estate, what is it called? The lease. I mean, like, seriously, I don't understand, like, I don't know what I'm reading. Like, I don't know how to even, what it's supposed to say. I mean, I have no idea, it's like some, foreign language. So they're supposed to know, but then Eddie somehow reads it and he finds like 15 mistakes after the attorney. So if I didn't have him, I really don't understand. Again, maybe it's just me and I'm like completely, just not aware of how people like can understand any of this. But there are like apparently specialists who are supposed to know what they're doing. They either don't care enough or they don't pay attention or they don't know. I don't know what's worse. But you're paying so much money for somebody that you think you should trust to do this. Okay, I don't know how my thing, and he's always, I think, saving me from many situations. I think I'll just hire the most expensive, the best in this field, because he's gonna, he should be the best, he should know. So I should avoid mistakes. If I hire this person, it will eliminate my future issues. Every time I'm wrong,
There's sort of two mindsets when you're going to try and do a startup. And that's one, I'll pay somebody to do this for me, or I'll learn as much as I can and take on all of that mindset. And that will be quote unquote cheaper. It's probably not cheaper. Your time has a very significant value to it. But I would suggest that the only way to do it without and feel confident that there aren't mistakes is to do both at the same time. Hire somebody and learn as much as you can so that you can make sure that your contracts don't have termination clauses in them. And, you're not going to get kicked out of your lease for any of this stuff. And, you need to sort of understand what's going on in your business. And if you don't, again, there is a lot of money that you are going to generate as a dentist. And those people that service you, they know that. They know, and they also know that you're very busy. You would much rather do awesome treatment plans and, work on other aspects, clinical aspects of your business. And your dental school never taught you anything about business at all, right? And so, you need to be mindful of the fact that, not that vendors rip you off, but that you don't need everything that they want to sell you. Be picky and choosy about the things that you need and the vendors that you choose to work with. Because the one thing about the dental industry is there's a lot of players, right? You can't find what you want from this person. There's somebody else that you're probably going to be able to find.
But the question is, when do you have time to look for this? Compare. Now you're trying to, as a startup, make the most you can with the time you have, fill those seats with patients so you can, do something. When are you supposed to learn all of this? I don't know, add little kids or being pregnant or other things. I mean, seriously, I don't know how people are supposed to do this.
Yeah.
It's very good.
One of the last scenarios I wanted to ask you is we've been discussing reviews throughout this process, right? That you guys have been mentioning. This one's called the dinner table. So you're hosting a dinner with 3 people who left scathing or horrible reviews of your business. What's the first thing you say to break the ice?
I'd say, welcome. Can I get you something to drink or eat? Right. I mean, because that's sort of, that's sort of the basis of what we're trying to accomplish at Dental Bar, make people feel welcome. And there's something just a visceral experience about eating and drinking with somebody that you form a bond and a connection. And I think that, once you've sort of built that sort of connection and made people feel welcome, then you can start digging into those. All right, now let's talk about your review, right?
I mean, let me just answer a bit, maybe not exactly to this question. Honestly, luckily, I don't want to jinx it, but all the reviews are rated 5-star reviews. I think at some point we had maybe one review or two for different, for truly strange reasons. But I remember like one of the posts that I mentioned or that I left in the Russian Facebook group. And honestly, like, no matter what you write there, it's always gets like you link through tomatoes and it's really like crazy. Usually it's like, it's weird, mom's groups. But there was one person who mentioned something who wasn't ever in our office ever. And she just had to write something bad about it. So it was hard, but we responded in a very cool and nice way, basically inviting her, and we wanted to give you a tour and show all these things that she had no idea what she was talking about. And as a result, people who saw our response and they started responding, it actually turned out well for us because they liked how we responded.
You can turn a negative review into a positive. You can turn your haters into some of your best advocates if you really give them the time and attention to sort of solve their problem. But you can also take any negative review and respond to it and highlight all the great things.
Right. And I think that's how we do it. If somebody ever, for some reason, is slightly unhappy, and most patients are reasonable, we try to be in their shoes and understand what we did wrong. And we always try to make it up, if it makes sense. If we did something somehow, because things are sometimes, can fall through the cracks. So I think people appreciate it. And there were a few instances when we could have closed the patient, but as a result, they brought their family, they brought their friends, because we handled it. And they're I think the whole thing was about always being very high ethical standards for this practice. And we always want to make sure that we care and
we're taking care of our patients. We believe in this sort of I'm sure you've heard of the net promoter concept, and the idea that you can really take every one of these negative experiences and flip it on its head and really turn it into a very powerful experience where somebody walks away saying, oh my goodness, I've never had a company treat me like that before.
Wow, wonderful. No, that's beautiful. And then one of the last questions I wanted to ask you is, for those of us who are already open, maybe within year 1 to year 5, what advice can you give us if we feel like we're either stuck in a situation, whether it's stuck with our collections, stuck with our team? What advice do you have?
That may be different from his advice. I think first understanding what it is, and you either can figure it out, and then there are ways, to get there. Sometimes you can, but you don't want to. And a lot of dentists who I know, they're like me. They want to be doing clinical work. They do not like the business side of it. And there are a lot of examples when people still stay, to work as a clinician, and maybe they hire somebody else or sell their practice to run it as a management company, right? And they can still stay there, if they love their practice. There are different ways to do it. Or sometimes maybe for whatever reason, this concept is just not working. And then maybe it's time to let it go and maybe start another one. I don't know. There are different scenarios, different situations for different people. But that would be kind of my advice. But any role has a different advice.
I would say it's your business. It is always your fault. If you can accept that and be sort of unbiased in your assessment of your front desk doesn't do this, the dental assistants don't do that. Okay, why? Are they not trained well enough? Are they not motivated well enough? Are they not, have you not had enough, time to talk to them about the importance of something? It's always you. It's always your problem. So you're always at the root of it. It doesn't mean that, you have to accept responsibility for everything that goes wrong, but it's your job to solve it. And so, if you're stuck somewhere, what are you doing wrong that you could be doing better? And be, looking at ourselves and saying, oops, messed that up, right? You've got to have a very thick skin to be an entrepreneur, and you have to be one of your biggest critics so that you can kind of look at the world with sort of that eye and then say, okay, where can I get better? Sure, maybe somebody's got to go. Maybe, maybe you've got a problem person, or maybe there's a policy that's broken, but it's your responsibility to fix it. It's your practice. You're stuck because of you. It may not be something you're intentionally doing, but be very, very self-critical, because your job as a manager is you can't do every job. You're going to, as an entrepreneur, when you're a startup, and you're going to clean toilets and, serve drinks and do all of that, right? As you go, it's your job to facilitate others doing their job. So if somebody isn't doing their job, maybe they're the problem, and ultimately you have to let go of that person. But is there any possibility that you could be doing something better to allow them to flourish and thrive?
Gotcha. Interesting. You guys are brilliant, man. Brilliant people. Brilliant in everything what you're doing. It's exciting.
He is, truly is, yes.
Like I'm learning a lot right now. Honestly, I took some notes and I was like, okay, let me see climate and what's the difference and all these other things, right? Like as far as fees and stuff, because you're right. We don't talk about it, but you don't know what you don't know. And there's a lot we kind of don't know whenever you're kind of just focused on the mouth and the clinical side. And like Vitallya, like you said, we're dependent on our team to update us on everything else that's going on. And I don't know if the office managers, I hope they're doing, I interviewed, you know what I mean? You're like, you look great. You were great out of the candidates that I had, but maybe I had crappy candidates this whole time. And I just got the one who's kind of knows what they're doing. So interesting stuff. If anybody has any questions or concerns, where can they reach out to you? Or where can they find you?
Yeah, they can always DM us on Instagram. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has. Can call the office and ask for me. As we've been through this journey, we've seen that, you can't always trust your consultants, but sort of the collective knowledge of the dentists that are out there, it's really amazing. The dentists are willing to really share their knowledge, their mistakes, and we've learned so much from just asking people on Facebook and other things like that, we're more than happy to help out.
Awesome. So that information is going to
pay
be,
that forward.
yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. That information is going to be in the show notes below for everybody. And Eddie and Vitallya, thank you so much for being with me on this podcast.
Thank
and we'll
you,
talk
Michael.
to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good one.